Ready.
Hey, John LaRoy, Apparel Redefined. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, Kurt. How are you?
My goodness gracious, I could not possibly be doing any better. We have a really dear close friend today. Did you get some sleep over the weekend? Did you get some rest for this one or what?
Me?
Yeah,
Not much, but that's
not
not
much.
well. Yeah, I mean, I was excited to finally talk to a fellow pucker. We've had a lot of we have rugby, we've had tennis, we've had
That's
baseball, and we've somehow missed hockey. But now
yeah.
you check that box.
It took me about 40 tries, and so I finally did it. This is just for you, dude. So, hey, it's my honor, my privilege. I want to introduce my dear friend, Lori Highby from Keystone Click. Lori, how are you today?
Great. Anytime I can talk hockey is a good day. So,
How's
All
it
right,
going to
so let's
show?
just,
Yeah.
you know what? Let's just rip off the band-aid. Let's dive in. So, Lori, how old were you when you started playing hockey?
oh man. Well, I was young, really young, probably like 5 or 6 years old. And then my mom took me out of hockey to be a ballet person, and that's not my jam. So when I was 16 years old, I was working at the ice rink in Milwaukee here, and I started playing hockey again. So from 16 to now is kind of really where the guts of my hockey career have been.
Nice. So you took a little gap there. So, John,
Hmm.
how old were you when you started? You on mute?
Yeah, started skating at 2.5, and
Oh,
then
did you?
yeah, I just tried that again with my oldest about 2.5 years ago. Just turned 5, didn't work out so well, but now we took a year off and he's loving it now. So uh, learned with the first one not to push as hard, but the
Yep.
second one is getting there. But yeah, it was 2.5, and then really my friends that I went to school with, John Carroll, plug for your daughters and mine.
Yep.
Everyone really likes hockey, but it's one of those sports. If you don't start young, it's really hard to get into.
Yeah.
You're essentially learning how to walk, on a different surface. So I think there's a lot of advantage to getting them started early, especially in this sport, and just learn how to skate. Once you learn that, it is like riding a bike. You get on and go. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Although I'd
Absolutely.
say in the Milwaukee community, there's a lot of hockey moms that are learning how to play,
Sure.
which is awesome. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
is there really? There's a lot of hockey. There's a
Oh,
lot of hockey moms that are learning how to play hockey.
yep, yep. But they got their own league and their own
Yeah.
division and everything. It's fun.
That's awesome.
Well, so I'm a figure skating dad, and so my daughter started skating at 5. We weren't sure what direction she was going to go, and she took to figure skating. So I've been to all the learn to skate and every practice. I watch all the hockey practices. So my second home was the skating rink, so I'm right there with you
Hmm.
guys. So Lori, let's dive in. So what we're going to have a conversation today. We want to talk to small entrepreneurs. A lot of the clients that John works with, these amazing, wonderful apparel customers that he's servicing on a daily basis. Man, we're just working relentlessly on how do we stop being the best kept secret. And
Yep.
so we wanted to bring in a powerhouse, just the authority. Just share a little bit. I want to start with Keystone Click, founded in 2008. How do you and your incredible, wonderful team at Keystone Click, how do you guys make a world a better place? Talk about what you guys do. Then we're going to dive into some marketing strategies for our friends here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a strategic digital marketing agency, and I put the emphasis on strategic because we believe in order to properly market to your customer, you need to understand them. So we start with research first. We research your ideal customer, we research your competition and your brand and how it's currently perceived in order to collect insights, take the data, build a strategic plan, and then we support the full implementation of that.
Nice. Okay, so little curious minds would love to know. So 2008, I know you and I've done a number of programs together. John, I don't know about you, but like things were a little tumultuous in 2008. Why did you pick industrial and you really work with B2B manufacturers, that type of thing? Why did you gravitate towards that market?
Yeah, so my dad was in manufacturing. I grew up visiting a tool and die shop and, somewhat becoming obsessed with seeing how things are made. And the other two agencies that I worked at prior to starting my own firm, we worked with a lot of manufacturing. I mean, Milwaukee's very blue collar and there's a lot of really cool things being made here. And I found as a marketer, there's awesome stories that are not being told, and that's what my job is to really help these manufacturers showcase their strengths and tell that awesome story of the neat things they're doing to make the world go round.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, so let's start here. So there's a friend out there who, for whatever reason, maybe something, they're accidental entrepreneur, maybe took a pivot, took a change, whether it was self-inflicted wound or maybe a job
Mhm.
loss, whatever it might be. But they've started a new company where they're selling apparel. What are some tips that you have as far as like kind of that starting that marketing 101? I love what you're saying about diving into that ICP, that ideal customer profile. Just share
Yeah.
a little bit about why is that so critical for our friends?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would start is get clarity on who that ideal customer is because apparel, especially, everyone could be a buyer, but if you're marketing to everyone, no one's going to buy from you. So the more that you get laser focused on what is unique about the offering that you have and ensuring that that uniqueness is going to be attractive to a very specific audience, the better and easier it is going to be to reel them in.
Yeah, I love that answer. And so, how about so I'm kind of put you on the spot here a little bit. So, say for our friend, if an entrepreneur, and I'm guilty of this, right? We try to be everything to everybody, and you
Hmm.
just said it. You become
Yep,
nothing
yep.
to no one. How do you encourage your clients? Maybe if you have a client that's kind of pushing back a little bit, right? How do you help encourage them to really niche down and focus on their core audience?
I'd look at past sales. And are there any trends that you can identify within past sales? At the end of the day, what you're looking for is what is that common denominator from people that are buying from you. So there are probably a lot of unique differences that you're going to find, but there is going to be a common denominator, either a pain that someone had or some sort of entertainment or educational value that's of interest to them. But you have to really identify whatever that common theme is, whether it's resonating with you as far as this is a new audience I want to get in front of, or from your current customer base, what is that common ground?
All right, John, let's get you in here and in the game here. What are you 20-year entrepreneur, you've built a wonderful, incredible business. And, what tips, advice do you share as far as, trying to help people niche down or some of the experiences that you've had as far as niching down?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like like Lori said, especially in our industry, everyone is a customer. I mean, like unless you're you know selling at a nudist colony, everyone's wearing t-shirts or should be, and decorated apparel. So your target or your service available market is massive. Your target market is smaller, but it's like what are you selling on? And I think in our industry and a lot of service based industries, there's three components of that triangle, right? Is it speed? Is it quality? Or is it price, right? And it's
Hmm.
difficult to sell on all three. And which of your customers, what is their most important? Are they looking for speed to market? Are they looking for quality? Or are they looking for price? And once you identify that, you can kind of identify what you're going to do to solve that need. And I think anyone in business, um, you really don't want to always solve for price. I mean, I think unless you're Amazon and Walmart and those guys that can really bully everyone downstream and upstream, so they're
Yeah.
still making their margin. It just takes a lot. I mean, it's really, really difficult to get to that size as a small business owner, right? So you have to be unique, kind of on the other two. And how do you do that? And what do you tell that story? And from my personal experience, like full transparency, we never talked about it. We kind of exist in that blue collar mentality where shut up, put your head down, and do your work, and don't tell anybody about your story because it's probably not that cool. And two, um, no one's supposed to know about you. You make other companies look good, right? And COVID kind of flipped all that on its head. As great as our relationships were with our top customers, our main niche was school and sports. And when there was no school and sports for 75-80% of the country, it really, like, hey, well, we can do it, but people didn't know who the hell we were. We didn't have that digital trust. And that's something that, and Kurt and I and his team at B2B have been so phenomenal in building that digital trust because we can service other markets that are still looking for speed and quality, but
Hmm.
we had to first convey that who we are, what we do, build that trust. So when they land on our LinkedIn, when they land on our webpage, they know that we do what we say and we say what we do. And we had a really hard time kind of coming into the light, as you will, if you will, of talking about what we do and how we do it. And in my head, it was always like, I'll get to it when it can look like Joe Rogan, and it's like you see everything in what you see becomes the expectation. And if the expectation's too big, it's almost paralyzing, right? You have decision paralysis.
Yeah.
And one of the things this guy I work out with, great guy, but he said, there's nothing that can't be done, and there's no goal too big. But if you're struggling, your first step's probably too big, right? You got to take a smaller first step at getting towards your goal, because if your first step is so massive that chasm that you're expecting to bridge is unrealistic, and it just may take longer, but you just got to take shorter first steps, to get to where you want to be. And that's kind of what Kurt and his team really coached us out of, where it doesn't have to look like Rogan, or anywhere near that to start. You just got to do it, right? And not to give Nike some shade there, but it really was that emphasis of just do it and get out of your own head, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think marketing for people, especially if you get into this thing where you got to talk about yourself, and most of the time, you are brought up talking about being humble and talking about, not showing off, just let your actions speak for you. And it's kind of like completely different in this space, especially now in the digital landscape of marketing, where it's like, no, you do need to talk about yourself. You need to be comfortable doing it. But it's getting out of your comfort zone, and something that's completely not natural, for people like me. And I feel like a lot of small business owners, especially in manufacturing, because it's so much of a team effort. And it's like, now I'm the guy that's standing on the podium, essentially speaking for the entire team. There's nothing that I can do in my company without a really skilled, talented team up there, but they're not doing this, right? But it's finding your role, right? What's your role? What's my job as the leader and CEO of the company? And what is their role? And just kind of understanding that and doing your role really well then. Sorry, that's a really long
Yeah,
answer.
yeah. So well, I think that's a perfect segue. So Lori, let's say, so for our entrepreneur friends, like say where John was a few years ago, what is the starting point? So we dive into that ICP, go into that buyer persona. How do you help someone like John, who's like, little humble, hesitant, doesn't want to tell their story? How do you get that story out of people?
Yeah, no, that's great. Actually, one of the things that we do is we call it a founder's interview, either a leadership interview or founders, and we're just asking you a bunch of questions to help you craft that story. We also have a process that we call a brand story strategy, where we're gathering specific data points and asking very insightful questions that. Because it's just a one-on-one conversation, you're not blasting out to the world, we can help you craft and really perfect that. What's important, and John kind of alluded to this a little bit, is you have to tell your story, especially with AI. And I'm the biggest AI fan, and you can't talk to me without AI being brought up now. However, there's this blandness that's happening because everyone's doing it. And the beauty of your story is that's what's unique to you. And that's what's going to attract the right fit clients. The people that are going to resonate with your story are going to want to work with you. So telling your story is more important now than it probably ever has been. You don't want to fall into what I refer to as a sea of sameness. You sound the same as everyone else that's doing the same thing that you're doing, especially if you're leaning into AI at all.
Sea of sameness. And my sister used to always preach, closed mouths don't get fed, right? So we got to, how do you avoid the sea of sameness? But we can't have closed mouths. Now, Lori, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up your website, and I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. I would love for you to, I have just massive respect for you, had the privilege of working with you for a number of years now. And we always kid around like there's marketers out there that are the kind of the cobbler's kid with no shoes, where they're like they're going to preach marketing, but they don't, like, they're so focused on their clients they don't do a great job for themselves. You do an amazing job on your website creating content. So I'm on your website now. You guys can see my screen, correct?
Yep, yep, yep.
And so just as for our friend out there who takeaways, what we would love is let's give a couple golden nuggets that's going to help them move the needle. Talk a little bit on like how I heard a podcast yesterday. Hey, we eat our own dog food, if you will. Like, you practice what you preach. Go take us there, will you?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing is the resources section right there. We're constantly sharing insights and education, and not just on our website, but we do webinars, our email marketing, our social media content. And what we're doing from that perspective is we're educating, we're adding value. Nothing in here is a sales pitch. It's helping you be better at what you're doing. So at the end of the day, you can make an intelligent business decision on how to move forward with your business. So I think we're close to 500, pieces of content in this bucket here, and it's probably there's more to throw out there because we've got YouTube videos, we've got podcast episodes, and we're in the works of kind of aggregating all of it here. But yeah, there's nuggets in all different areas. You can search within the resource section on how to do something. Yeah, our process is really, like I talked about, that research is really, really important to understand. But everything we do, we start with research, because if you're just going to make an assumption, you're going to waste time and money, and we don't want that. So understanding, it takes a little bit more time, but you have a better end result at the end of the day. And I think that's uber important.
Well, and let's go another great segue. So John was just mentioning, like, hey, if it's too big or too far, right? So if somebody's out there and they're on blog 0 and they say like, oh, gee, Lori's at 500, let's reduce the overwhelm, right? Let's bring them back a little bit. And again, like, we just want to kind of get started. So now you've taken a client through, you've helped them identify that ICP, right? That ideal customer.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about, you do a great job of like understanding like where's that customer hanging out, where to find them, how to engage with them. Let's take that first step for folks.
Yeah, and that's part of that research, is really getting inside the head of that ideal customer. And those are the types of questions we have. We do customer interviews to figure out, and not only why did they decide to work with you, but how did they find you, and what podcasts are they listening to, what social media channels are they hanging out on. But more importantly, what is the challenge or the pain that they have that you're ultimately the solution for? That's what's important, to make sure you're crafting content around that. So when you're saying, oh, I've got 500 blog posts and that's intimidating and overwhelming, the easiest thing to start thinking about, and this is actually more important for AI now than ever, is what are the questions that people are asking, and thinking about it from that entire customer journey, because they don't just start their journey with the intention to buy. They start their journey because they have a challenge of some sort and they're trying to solve that problem. So you need to answer those questions in the form of content at the beginning of the customer journey, and create that content in all forms, video, blogs, podcasts, newsletters, social media posts. That's going to help you get found in the search engines and the AI platforms when someone's searching that challenge.
So as an entrepreneur yourself, very busy lady, and then you're on the ice when you're not helping people grow their businesses. What was the starting point for you? Like, did you start blogging first? Did you start social? Like, what was your journey like to kind of get things started?
I mean, I would say Facebook was at the very early stage.
Was Facebook your thing? Was that your
I
jam?
know when it started. I mean, that was, blogging was the first thing I did.
Yep.
I started on, we had our website, super basic website, and we started blogging. And I always like to share, the power of a blog. And most companies are, they don't want to do it because it takes time, but they'll start spending on ads right away. Well, I have blogs that were written over 10 years ago that still drive traffic to our website. So that 4 or 5 hours worth of time to craft something of value has been serving us for multiple years. I mean, how many people can say that about a paid ad? They're spending money on ads, which is great. I'm not saying no on that, but it's worth the time investment to craft quality content, telling your story that's ultimately, again, going to help solve the problem of your ideal customer, and it's going to connect with them and show them that you're the expert.
So let's go here. John always loves talking about with his apparel, like, your apparel kind of defines your brand promise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while we're on this page that we're looking at here for our friends checking this out, talk a little bit about, you are a fierce, unapologetic educator. You work at a local university. You and I've done multiple webinars together. You're always doing training. Mm-hmm. What is in it that you have like this fierce passion for helping educate as your marketing strategy?
Yeah, I think that especially on the B2B side of things, and they are really big decisions that, big business decisions that there's big dollar amounts associated with it. You want someone to feel comfortable with that decision that they're making, and educating them along the way is going to be a big component of building that trust. You're proving that you can do the thing that you said you can do. And ultimately, I also believe that the more that you educate someone, the better you get at it. So I think it's, kind of serving multiple purposes.
Well, love it. So, John, I want to get you back on stage here. So, I love Lori's mission right here to navigate, educate, to provide fully customizable digital resources for clients and their stakeholders. Drop the mic moment right there, Lori. So, I absolutely love that. John, your thoughts is what Lori's describing here. What are your takeaways?
It's a lot. I mean, I think people they loosely say the word marketing now and don't realize like the breadth of what it means, right? Like marketing, as I was just writing down here, it's like you can get ads fall under content, social updating, PR, sales to some component of pre-qualifying leads to get to the sales team. Like, I think people just say the word marketing now and they really fail to understand like which avenue, if not all, do you pursue, and what has the highest ROI, right? Because it's just such a crowded space in every industry. Because in our industry, when you talk about print on demand, like cost per click has skyrocketed over the past 3-4 years, and there's brands that they pay for every one of their customers, and when that cost triples, that cost customer acquisition cost is skyrocketed.
Yep.
And unless you've really built a good relationship and own the client, like they're just going somewhere else where there's a different ad in front of them. So yeah, what does your brand say about you? But yeah, and for us, kind of just getting into doing some marketing over the past 2-3 years and looking at ROI, you would think with all the tools out there that didn't exist 10 years ago, it is easier to measure ROI. And it is. You could definitely see like what your spend is versus this in certain areas. But stuff like this, where you're doing just putting content out there to enhance your image, is still a component of, I feel like, your overall marketing strategy. But there's still not a way, like, in my opinion, like to totally measure like a direct ROI. And
Yeah, I agree with that
yeah,
100%. Actually, the attribution, getting a true attribution, I don't think will ever exist unless we all have microchips and every single activity of our lives is being logged and documented. This is an argument that I've had a long time in the measurement side of marketing. It's great that, yeah, all the digital stuff you can track and measure and prove the ROI, but what happens to that, the brand awareness component is so important. I feel a lot of companies are missing the ball on that, because that's where you're building the know you, like you, trust you components. And lots of companies are just, I need the sale now, without understanding that 80 to 90% of that journey is on the brand awareness side of things.
yeah, I agree. That's something I learned a little while ago. But when you have a limited resource, like where do you think you're getting your most bang for your buck, especially in manufacturing, where you know you have much more overhead than other industries tied up in your most valuable resource, which is your labor, right? And your human capital. Margins are tight, and where can you go to have the highest ROI quicker? And what do you think? Like what's your opinion there? Where if someone hasn't done any marketing, but they're a successful company, been around for a while, where should they focus first?
I would start back at the customer and figure out where are they hanging out.
Okay.
Is there some sort of an influencer that already has their attention? Like, is there a podcast that everyone in this industry is listening to? Or is there a certain social media channel or group that people are hanging out in? Figure out, where that pond is that your fish are swimming in, and that's where you would start positioning yourself as a resource and not aggressively selling. You're there to support and advocate. And that's how you start building that brand awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely love that. So, Lori, let's go here. So, you are a self-professed AI junkie, and one thing, and John, great question. And Lori and I just did a program, I think a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And Lori, if my recollection, I said, Lori, any takeaways for our friends? And you said, just get started, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that you said just get
Yeah.
started. So just, we're all we're big sports junkies. Sometimes you got to just lace up the skates, put on the spikes, whatever sport you're playing, just get on the field and you need to get a little dirty or fall on the ice a little bit, but just get started. You're a self-professed AI junkie, and man, it is like when you and I did the webinar 2 weeks ago, we're literally like, all right, whatever we're talking about today is probably going to be obsolete tomorrow.
For
So
sure.
come back
Yeah.
tomorrow. But just for our friends out there who are like, they're getting golden nuggets right here. What are some AI tips that you feel that are relevant as of this moment today that we're talking about AI?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're really having discussions around right now is people are using AI to no different than a search engine. So you need to make sure that you're showing up in the AI tools as a result. And it's different than the search engines, which were just a long list of links. Now it's you're having a conversation with the AI platform. So you want to make sure that you are positioned as the expert and the trusted source that's being, fueling the response in AI. And it's very similar to search engine optimization, but it's a little bit of a different game that you need to play with that.
Yeah, and changing literally daily or by the hour. So,
Yeah.
any tips, strategies like we've talked about buyer personas, creating content, any AI tips that any hacks that you want to share with anybody that they
Oh
could
God,
take away?
there's so many.
I know,
How do
I know.
I even begin with that? I mean, at the end of the day, the more information and the quality of the information that's going into the AI platform, the better quality the output is. You don't just put a generic prompt that says, write me 10 Facebook posts for my company. You have to really give it quality information, include the details about your customer persona, point out who your competition is, map out what specific platform you're going to be writing the content for, feed it the insights about what the biggest challenges are your customer has, and then you're going to get quality content that comes out of it. The more you give, the better you're going to get.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So, just on a side note, John, I want to get you back on stage here. So, I was talking with a client a couple weeks ago, and seasoned gentleman, I'll say, and we're sitting there talking, and you guys are way too young to remember this, but there was I'm going to bring up. Why would I do this? I'm going to bring up two sad things, but he was heavily involved with Johnson and Johnson during the Tylenol tragedy
Mm,
of Chicago in the early '80s, and that's like a case study of
yeah.
how a company thrived handling a crisis. And he was like front row seat to this. I talked to him the next week. I'm like, dude, I was so moved by you sharing that story about the Tylenol. He goes, well, I got one better. He goes, the company that he was at, they were doing a trade show in Manhattan at the Javits Center on 9/11. And he went
Oh,
on to tell me the whole story. So I'm talking with the CEO a few days later. I'm like, did you know John did this with Tylenol? Did you know John did this for 9/11? And they're like, you know what? We're going to take those and we're going to turn them into blog posts because like that's telling our story in this,
yeah.
from 40 years ago. And so anyway, I love what you're sharing. John, your thoughts on AI marketing, all this brilliance, these gems that Lori's dropping. What are your thoughts?
I'm just curious, like when you talk about how your foundation of what you do starts with research, right? how how close or how far you guys are experts at prompting it though, but like when you perform your research before ChatGPT to now, like you got ChatGPT, you click deep research, and you're coming up with stuff. Like, are you finding that's accurate? Are there big gaps it's missing, or is it is it kind of like there's not enough out there maybe about your company or your customer profile?
Well, we still do a lot of the manual research, meaning, like I said, we talked about the founders interview to
Right.
really understand their perspective. And we do the phone calls with customers still. But we take that and we leverage the AI information that's collected too to kind of compare and contrast. Anything that's generated from AI, I still 100% say you have to validate that information. You cannot just trust it immediately.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it really has become. I mean, in my industry, right? Graphic designers, they were probably the first one that got the most spooked, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that good. And now with iteration 4.2 or 3 or whatever we are, and then all of the mid journey stuff, um,
It's
I
kind of
I
crazy.
specifically have
Yeah.
people on my team that now look at it the way I was hoping they would, where it's a time saver, right?
Yeah.
It's like you get writer's block, and it's like, hey, I got 83 people asking me for, hey, what's your idea for this family reunion? And it's like that would literally take hours, and now it's like, hey, here's 10 minutes, really good prompt. You
Yeah.
can go decide what you think is a good starting point, right? And then get me to the finish line. But yeah, really, it has become a really ubiquitous tool in my daily work cycle and what I do. Um, and I continue to find ways where, for example, just on a manufacturing floor, like, hey, we're having problems with this color match, when we're putting a base coat and we're not getting this. And it's like, we would call the manufacturer before the manufacturer would call like the mixing system company and like all these different loops to see whose finger gets pointed at and
Yeah.
who's doing it wrong. Put that stuff in a chat GPT and it's like it comes up with three different scenarios to try to get closer to this PMS value. And really like, oh my gosh, and just kind of like imparting that onto our mid-level and our leadership team.
Yeah.
Hey, you don't always need to go down the old ways to find out answers, right? Like again, still validate it, but here's a tool that everyone has that let's use this as a starting point rather than something that will take maybe 3 or 4 weeks and we'll revisit to it eventually. But now it's like, no, you can at least get a pathway to a solution instantly where before you might need to talk to the vendor rep and all this type of stuff and it would take weeks. And now it's, seconds.
Yeah. I love that. We've been doing that for a lot of web development type challenges that we experience as well. Another thing that I've done recently is I built a custom GPT to think like me so that when my team has a challenge, they can go there first and then it's going to help them solve that problem to ultimately save me a little bit of time, but hopefully help them. I'm teaching them to think strategically through the process too. I'm not just giving them the answer. So I built the GPT that way, and it's been really kind of cool.
That's cool.
That is absolutely brilliant, Lori. So, all right, we'll close out because I know we're at time. For anybody out there that is not familiar with what is a custom GPT, can you just explain? That is absolutely brilliant. Gosh, I love that idea.
Sure. So basically, whenever you're using, well, it's ChatGPT, you usually want to define the role and the action or the context and kind of really give it the insights. And that talked about is really the more you give, the better the outcome. And if you find you're kind of repeating some of those components, or there's very specific scenarios, such as think like Lori here, you can create a custom GPT where you're defining the role and the context and all that in advance, and it just kind of stores it in one little bucket. And then you can trigger chats for efficiency's sake from that same bucket.
So I was reading an article by kind of like an AI guru the other day, and in his comment, he said it's as exciting as AI is, it's scary. Lori, exciting, scary. How do you feel about AI?
Both. And exhausting. It's exciting, it's scary, and exhausting because it's happening and moving faster than anybody.
It,
Nobody can keep up with it.
it's just absolutely wild. So, all right, Jen, we're gonna wind down. Thoughts, takeaways, parting thoughts. That what do you want to share? Just man, what a master class here with Lori. What are your thoughts?
No, it's outstanding. I mean, um, I guess in all the areas of marketing that we call marketing, like what is your expertise? What do you like to do the most, and where do you feel that you're really helping your clients?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I mean, I think the unique differentiator that I bring to the table is that we're looking at the entire picture of the digital ecosystem instead of just looking at one specific lane or channel, because these channels are constantly changing. The demands and expectations of the customer is constantly changing. So you got to make sure that all of these moving parts are working together to achieve the bigger picture goal.
Yeah, for sure. They're all important.
Drop the mic on that one. So, Lori, we're gonna wind down. We're gonna close out. So, all right, the quote over your shoulder says, who dropped that famous quote right there behind you?
That would be Wayne Gretzky.
Yes, that's right, Mr. Famous Wayne Gretzky. So, all
Mhm.
right, so if who's your favorite team of all time? Who's your favorite team?
Chicago
They're
Blackhawks.
Blackhawks. All right, that a girl. So, Lori, I want to thank you, appreciate you, applaud you. Just my respect, admiration for you, just off the charts. It's always a privilege for us. Thank you for sharing your expertise. We're going to put your website, your LinkedIn, all the stuff in the show
Awesome.
notes. You have a wonderful podcast called The Broadcast for Manufacturers, and you do it with two dear friends. We just had one of your co-hosts on the show 2 weeks ago. So I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us. And for our friends out there, check out Lori, check out Keystone Click, and reach out to her and stop by and visit John while you're at it too. So thank you guys.